Hi guys, this is Nikki Rowland and welcome to Scrap Academy. Today we're talking about different types of papers and cardstock. So I am going to talk you through the supplies that I use in terms of cardstock and papers, and then I'm going to put this all to one side and get out some supplies to make a layout with, which I'll do like a normal process video. So I will speed up and do a voiceover, whereas this part is filmed live. So to begin with, I wanted to talk through cardstock. So I use a brand called Basil. They're my favourites. They're owned by American Crafts. You can also get an array of different colours in American Crafts cardstock too, but this brand Basil is my personal favourite, and that's what I tend to use. So my go-to white cardstock is Basil White. It has like a weave effect. You may not be able to see it particularly well on the screen, but it's kind of almost cross-hatched, a textured cardstock. You can get plain cardstock, but I tend to stick with textured. So this is what I use for the layouts, most of the bases of my layouts. You can get it in all different colours. So you can see there, loads of different colours. And then I've also recently started to use another type of Basil cardstock, which is called Avalanche. It's still white. It's pretty much exactly the same shade as Basil White, but it has a different texture. So Basil do lots of different types of textured cardstocks. So really it's just up to you what you prefer. And I particularly like this one. It has this different texture. It's like a line rather than a crosshatch. And particularly I quite like the way this is looking at the moment. So I've switched over to use more of the Avalanche, but it really doesn't matter. If I had to use Basil White for the rest of my life or Avalanche for the rest of my life, either would be absolutely fine. It's just a matter of personal preference. So talking more about the different types of textured cardstock that Basil do, they also do one like this that's got dots all over it. It's called Dotted Swiss, and that again comes in all different colours. You can get it in white too. And they also do something called Basil Bling, which is shiny. I don't know if you can see it so well on the camera, but it has a shimmer to it. It's really, really pretty. So this is called Basil Bling, and again, it comes in all different colours. So we'll move on to the that bit in just a moment, but just going back to the different textures, I happen to have these swatch books. Normal people don't have these. It's just because I order stock from the States, and once my supplier sent me these big swatch books so that I could always check my colours of Basil. So I have all these here, so I know a bit more about the different textures. They really don't mean very much. It's just a case of whether you like the different types of weave that you like on your paper. So don't get too hung up on it. But if you see a name of a cardstock and it's called Mono or Fours or Crisscross, Classic, Prismatic, Dotted Swiss, that's the one I showed you, Orange Peel, Burlap or Smoothies, that's what they're referring to. The smoothies are obviously smooth, completely smooth, no texture on them at all. Then the burlap is very tight together weave crosshatch. Orange peel is what you would expect it to be. It's got like a bumpy effect on it. Dotted Swiss is the one with all the dots on. It's one of my favourites. I really like Dotted Swiss. Classic is very similar to the Basil White that I use. It's also the same as Fours, or very similar to Fours. So these guys, Classic, Fours, are very, very similar. So again, it doesn't really matter what you use. Prismatics is a bit more like the Orange Peel, very similar, and Crisscross is a very tight crosshatch but diagonal rather than up and down. And then you've got Mono. So the Mono, Classic and Fours are all extremely similar. Which one? but some of them even look smooth. So it's the 4s actually that are the same as my Avalanche, which is the weave that's pretty much just in one direction. It's horizontal. The Mono and the Classic are this more of a crosshatch. So again, like I just said, don't get too hung up on it, but if you're interested in the different names that you see online when you're buying this stuff, that's what it is. They have these different collections. I think it's just a way of producing the same color in several different ranges. It doesn't really mean that much. It really is just down to personal preference. So that is what all of those names are for. Okay, so that is cardstock, basil cardstock. Moving on to mixed media cardstock. I like to use one called Marshmallow, and again it's by Basil, again, who are owned by American Crafts. It's a thick, very thick mixed media cardstock. It's smooth, not textured, and apparently it's pre-treated, although I've never actually seen any official documentation to say that it is pre-treated coming from Basil. I tried looking for that on the internet once and couldn't find it, but that's what people say, is that it's already pre-treated so that you can put lots of mixed media on top and it won't warp. It does warp a bit, and if you were to apply some gesso it would stop the warping more, but you can definitely apply mixed media directly onto this Basil Marshmallow cardstock and have no major problems. I mentioned gesso, which is something like this. It's a paint, it's a primer, and what that means is that it goes over the top of the cardstock and it protects the cardstock from the wet from the mixed media that you're going to put onto it. So it means that the water doesn't seep into the cardstock and make it warp, in theory anyway. You can get clear gesso in different colours. A lot of people use white, but the white gesso tends not to be a true white and you can really see it on your layout. So I use a clear one and I can apply that to my background and then it won't warp. Quite often I don't even bother, to be honest. I mostly just go directly onto here. I don't use enough mixed media to worry too much about it, but if you're going to be really heavy with your mixed media, then consider investing in some clear gesso. So that's Marshmallow. Something almost exactly the same but a different brand is Vicky Boutin White Foundations Mixed Media Art Paper. This is brilliant. This is a new pack, but it's even thicker than the Marshmallow and does exactly the same as the Marshmallow. So that's just an alternative brand and I really rate this as well, and that you buy in a pack. A paper pad, whereas the Marshmallow you tend to buy in individual sheets or packs of 25. And then moving on finally to watercolor paper. So if you really want to soak your paper with water, you need something much heavier than Marshmallow or the Vicky Boutin mixed media art paper foundations, and you might want to use something that's proper watercolor paper. So this is by Prima, and you can see that it really is artist watercolor paper. It's got that feel to it and it really does absorb the water and the paint really well. So that's probably my favorite brand of watercolor paper. I don't do a lot of watercolor, to be fair, and it's also not a true white, which I find slightly frustrating. It's more of a cream color. So but it just depends on what you're doing. So if you're doing some serious watercoloring, then I would go for something like this. So that is cardstock. I thought I would show you some examples. So this is a mixed media layout done on Marshmallow cardstock background. So I haven't applied any gesso, I've just gone for it, and you can see that it is a little bit warped, but nothing major, and it's taken my mixed media really well. So that is a classic example of mixed media onto Marshmallow cardstock. Then I have this one here, which is Marshmallow 2, but what I've done is I've used my Marshmallow to cut a cut file, and I've applied my mixed media to my cut file. So that's something else you can do with cardstock, is you can cut it out on the silhouette machine or a similar die cutter and apply mixed media directly to your cardstock. So same applies. If I was going to just use a cut file for non-mixed media reasons, then I would just cut it from normal white cardstock or any colour. But when I want to apply mixed media, I want to do it on a cardstock that will take the mixed media well, so that's why I've used basil there. Okay, so that is cardstock. And then moving on to pattern papers, you see something like this. So this is a collection called Dear Lizzie Here and Now. So you can see that in this collection there are lots of different patterns, and these aren't even all of them. When we talk about paper collections, we tend to talk about something like this. So somebody like Dear Lizzie or Crepe Paper or Maggie Holmes, Chamel, they all have paper lines, very fashionable. Like fashion, it changes constantly. So these are pattern papers. So if we talk about pattern papers, you can see that they come in all different beautiful patterns. They are, when you buy 12 by 12 sheets like this, they are almost always double-sided. So you have patterns on both sides, and we call the main pattern, so this is the main print. You can see that it's got the branding on the front here. This is the A side, and then the alternative on the back is normally a bit more toned down, not as busy as the first one. This would be called the B side. And quite often a lot of these paper collections come with a branding strip at the top, so you can see that that's the main branding strip with all the details on it, and on the back it's just a pretty colour, so you have this extra strip of pretty pattern paper there. So I'll use those a lot. So people call them barcode strip or manufacturing strip or remnants. People call them all different things, but that's what that is. So they are 12 by 12 papers. In almost every collection these days you get a sheet like this. It's no different in terms of quality. It's still a pattern paper, and you have an A and a B side. When I said it was toned down a bit on the B side, maybe Dear Lizzie didn't get the memo. But this would be normally referred to as a cut apart sheet, where you have lots of different journaling cards or elements on one page that you can cut up and use as embellishments. So if you ever see anyone referring to something as a cut apart sheet, they are talking about something like this. There are papers in collections that have lots of smaller items on as well. Now, something like this, people might refer to that as a cut apart sheet because you could literally cut up every single one of those cacti, and use those as embellishments too. So that could also be referred to as a cut apart sheet, but less likely, that's more likely to be referred to something as fussy cutting, so a sheet for fussy cutting. And this is your main cut apart sheet in this collection. So those are pattern papers. You can also get pattern papers in smaller sizes, so normally a 6x6 or 6x8 paper pad. 6x8 seems to be the new trendy size, so that's what I've got here. And you'll see that these are the same papers from a collection. Be warned, they don't always have every single pattern in, and they're quite often the A sides and not the B sides, or some B sides but not all of them. They tend to be so for example, this one's 36 papers of 2 each of 18 different designs. So just be wary when you're buying something. If you think you're getting the whole collection, you might not. And then you get repeats and you get doubles as well. So you can see that in here we have the same print. This, if I had the whole 12 by 12 collection, which I don't, then you'd see that they have very similar prints to what they already have. Some have added foil effects on them, not all of them. This one does as well. And they are single-sided. That's the important thing to note about 6x8 papers or 6x6 paper pads. They are single-sided, so not double-sided like the 12 by 12s. Okay, so these are really cute for card making. They're also good if you want lots of little bits of paper. I tend not to get these so much these days. I tend to stick with the 12 by 12s. But these are great, just because I ended up with too many, that's all. But they are great for if you wanted to do like paper folding or something. They would be good to get lots and lots of different patterns on your paper, and they're good value too. So that is 6x8 pads. And then moving on to speciality sheets. So you can get, most collections now have a speciality sheet or two included in their collections. So you can get all different types, and they normally come in a plastic packaging like these, and they're normally on cardstock with foil, or on acetate or on vellum. So the cardstock one that I have here is literally a sheet of white cardstock, and it has foiled elements all over it. This is dying to be fussy cut. This is from a Christmas wintry collection. So that is one sample of a cardstock speciality paper. Then we have acetate, which is like clear plastic, which I'm sure you're all aware of what acetate is, to be fair. But it is literally a sheet of plastic, and it has they used to only seem to have foiled things on acetate and vellum, but now we have colours as well. So we have these beautiful flowers on acetate with this beautiful silver going through it. So that is a really gorgeous sheet of acetate. Sometimes they come packaged on a sheet of white card in the background, so don't be fooled into thinking that it's on white. It's not, it's completely clear. This is probably not the best example because it's so busy of pattern you can't tell, but some of them have designs that are spaced far apart, and then you can really see through the acetate. So that is a speciality sheet on acetate. And then we have the vellum. So for those who are not familiar with vellum, vellum is basically tracing paper, that, you know, sheet that you can see through just about, but has that cloudy effect. So this is from the Maggie Holmes Sweet Story collection, and it's so beautiful. So it's that vellum, it's not acetate, it's not completely clear, it has that cloudy look on the paper there, and it has these lovely, almost embossed gold foil flowers all over. So again, that is one that I will probably fussy cut to pieces because I love a vellum flower. They're so pretty. Yeah, so they're tend to be the three types of specialty papers: vellum, acetate and cardstock, all normally printed with some form of foil as well. Okay, so they are specialty papers. And then finally, I wanted to mention thin cardstock is useful for many things. I buy it in A4 size so I can run it through my printer, because that's ultimately what I want to do with this. So I just buy smooth white lightweight cardstock, and it's for running through I have a laser printer, but a normal photo printer would be fine with this weight too. It just means that I can print printables. I use my Silhouette print and cut feature a fair bit. So these were a freebie from the Cocoa Vanilla Studio National Scrapbooking Day celebrations. I haven't used yet, so I would fussy cut all of these out and use them to create a layout. My printer ink was going funny, so this is supposed to be a wood grain colour, but it's gone a bit strange, so I'll have to reprint them. But yeah, so that's another white piece of cardstock that you might want to have a look at. And then I thought I'd show you a couple more examples of layouts. So this one is a regular pattern paper. Now this particular brand of paper here is called is by Pink Fresh Studio, and they have very thick pattern papers. They're almost cardstock, but you can see I got brave and I put some mixed media onto my layout, and it's really, really warped. This is a classic example of where I should have used some clear gesso onto my background, so that it would take the paint better and not warp so much. So I just thought I would mention that. And then here is one made with lots of layers of pattern paper, and it's this piece here is a Pink Fresh Studio. It's really, really thick paper, you can't tell on screen obviously, but it's a really, really heavy layout because I've got three pieces. I've got a piece of regular pattern paper, I have a piece of basil cardstock, and I have another piece of pattern paper that's a different brand, it's on basil white in the background. So this is a super duper heavy layout, but a great example of how you can lay out your beautiful patterns to make a lovely layout. Okay, so that is my lesson in cardstock and pattern papers, and I am now going to make a layout using this collection here, which is the Crepe Paper Magical Forest. You can see that I have got the cut apart sheet. I've already started to use it, so I have cut some apart already, and it has a lovely star print on the back as well, which I really love, but this side is great for extra embellishment, so I'll probably continue to use that. And I also have a sheet of speciality vellum, that's copper foil on vellum speciality sheet that goes with this collection. And then I have the regular pattern papers as well. Again, I'd probably call that a cut apart because they're so cute. I've already started cutting some of bits out from there. I have some mushrooms, how cute. And I have 2 sheets of rainbows. That was an accident. But as I've used cut one already, maybe I'll use this one as a full sheet somehow. So that is what I'm going to be using to make my layout today. Plus I have a whole ton of embellishments too. So how exciting. I love embellishments. Right, okay. I better get started. Okay, so my plan is to use lots of pattern paper in this layout. For those who don't know, I set myself a scrappy New Year's resolution at the beginning of the year to use more pattern paper on my layout. So the reason for that was because I have a wall of 30 layouts up right next to me actually in my craft room. And I looked one day and realised that every single one had a white background. So I thought, well, I need to get a bit more colour and pattern in my life. So I have been on a mission this year not to reach for the white cardstock backgrounds and to include other pattern paper on my layout. It doesn't have to be a full sheet, but just to try to include a large area of pattern onto my layout. So anyway, today is one of those layouts, and actually I'm not going to use any white cardstock today at all. So my photo is of my 2 children in a little tiny little teepee, makeshift teepee made out of logs and twigs that someone else built. We didn't build it, on our local walk. So we have some fabulous lakes around where we live, and there's lots of footpaths around it, and one of the footpaths leads down to this little teepee style construction. So this photo is of them sitting inside the teepee. So I thought I would try to make a teepee on this layout. So I ran into difficulty because one of my pattern papers had a corner missing because I'd already cut a rainbow from it. So I managed to get myself a bit confused with that, because what I wanted to do was to create a teepee onto my layout, which is actually what I do manage to achieve, but I couldn't quite stretch the pattern in the way that I wanted. So in the end I've used, I end up making it very complicated for myself, but I didn't really need to. I've used the mushroom paper from the Magical Forest collection, and I've torn a big rip right through the centre. I have then backed that with the gold paper, and the gold paper was what was giving me the issues because I didn't have quite a full sheet, and that shouldn't really have been as tricky as it was, but it seemed to cause me major issues. I'm not entirely sure what I was playing at, to be honest. But you can see that now what I'm doing is I'm layering the gold paper underneath the mushrooms, and pink paper is pink on the other side, and I decided at this point to have a double opening in my teepee, and I wanted to have 2, basically I'm going to roll back the sides of those papers to create the teepee shape, but that needs backing with something. So I've used the craft cardstock as my background. I wanted my gold pattern paper to show through at the bottom edge and at the top edge, and I'm going to back the inside of the teepee with this fabulous rainbow speciality paper from Crepe Paper and Magical Forest. I love it so much because it is a vellum, and it has copper foiled rainbows on it, so it's really, really, really lovely. It just kind of catches the light and shines, and it's quite subtle because it's all one colour, and the vellum of course is subtle too. So okay, now I'm attempting to create these rolls of paper. Now this is a little tricky because the paper is quite thick because it's regular scrapbooking paper, and that is quite heavyweight in the first place, but therefore I wanted to roll it and for it to stay in position. So I've run into a bit of difficulty doing this. There's no way they were going to stay in place without being forced to. So I have just switched on my hot glue gun, and I'm going to sort out those rolls of paper with my hot glue gun, and then I'm also going to secure it with something else too. Sorry, I just bashed the camera there, and I also haven't realised that I've done that either. I think what happened was my extension lead that I have on my table fell off down the back of the table, and it was plugged into my phone, which is up on the stand, so therefore it jogged the camera without me really realising. So sorry that you have a view of the edge of my desk and that we're slightly off centre here, but that's what happened. Honestly, you'd think I would have learnt by now. I make these mistakes all the time. Okay, so I am mounting my 2 photos. Now in the end I decided that I can't fit 2 photos in the teepee, inside the teepee, so I end up with just using 1. So I have saved 1 for another day. I'm using the cut apart sheet that you can see there to the left to mount my photos. So when you get sheets with these extra journaling cards on, to me that's just like extra little swatches of pattern paper. I normally cut out the any details that's in the middle depending on what they are, and save those for later, and still back my photos on those journaling cards. And I've distressed the edges as well. So now you can see that I'm tightly rolling those pieces of paper, and I've got my hot glue gun there ready to hold those in place. That's a lot of tension on those rolls of paper, so the hot glue gun really was the only thing that was going to hold those down, and even with the hot glue gun I'm worried that they'll come off. I'm rolling it around a paintbrush, by the way, so I can get them nice and tight. So I can get them much tighter by rolling them around something than I can just by using my hands. So I have rolled it around a paintbrush, got them into position, and then stuck them with the hot glue gun. So yay, that's looking like a teepee now. I'm so happy. I planned for my rainbow, that's a yarn rainbow from the Magical Forest collection, to sit on the top of the teepee. That's a bulky embellishment, so I'm probably going to stick that with the hot glue gun as well. So now that I have my teepee positioned, I can now work out where the rest of my layout is going to go, and I'm looking at my 2 photos there and worrying that that they're not going to fit. I also have the point at the top of my teepee also has got no rainbows there. My vellum I didn't cut high enough, so I just snipped off another rainbow from a spare piece and tucked that under. So this is how I'm going to secure the rolls of paper. I'm going to turn them into little tiebacks, from, like, if you had a tent, you know how you can roll back your door of your tent and tie it, so that's what I'm planning to do here. So I've created a hole either side of those rolls of paper, and I'm just tying some baker's twine around it in a double knot and then a bow, and then snipping the ends off. So that's a double feature there because it's my daughter just coming in to have a look at that rainbow. She really likes it. Probably asking me, "Mummy, can I have it?" Normally she wouldn't be in shot, but because my camera is at a funny angle, it is in shot, so sorry about that. So yeah, these bows form a double feature, so the double purpose. So the first purpose is to hold the rolls of paper in place, and the second purpose is to act as an embellishment. Say it becomes quite a nice feature because it's like a tent or teepee style layout. Those tiebacks go really, really well. Okay, so just also going to what I also wanted to create was the top part of the teepee. So when you make a teepee out of sticks, you know, a traditional teepee that's out of like 3 sticks or something, you have these top bits sticking out at the top. So I'm just putting those in with some more of the same twine I used for the tiebacks, and I've just taken a few strands and tied them all together, and then stuck them onto my layout to fan them out. And I'm going to put a flag on the top of them as well, so they don't actually show too well at the end of the layout, but they are cute. And then my rainbow is just about to go on there, so I've tied a bow around the top of the rainbow, and then I'm just sticking that on the top. Again, I'm using my hot glue gun. I don't often use my hot glue gun in scrapbooking, but on this layout I've used it twice. To roll back those papers and also to stick the rainbow, because the rainbow is pretty bulky, so that's the sort of thing that I would use either glossy accents for or the hot glue gun. So yeah, that's what I'm doing there. Okay, so yeah, back to my photos and the internal part of the layout. So obviously I haven't got any photos on at the moment, I've only got my embellishments done, or the basics of the layout done. So my photo is going to go in the middle inside the tent, and I'm just going to use one of these super duper cute paper clips. I love these, they're so sweet. I just love the look of the little creatures. They're on clothes pegs, but those are even a bit too bulky for me, so I'm just chopping off the clothes peg from the back of the creature. It was actually harder than normal to get that off. Quite often they're easy to pull apart, but this occasion it took a few attempts with my big scissors there to get that off there. But I'm glad I did, because he or she, really cute little fox, goes really well with my layout there, and the type of feel I want for this layout, kind of very woodland type. So now I'm just working out I've decided at this point that I'm only going to have one photo, so now I need to work out how I'm going to embellish around it, because I have a very small space now, just inside this triangle. Doesn't give me much room for anything else, so I'm just trying to work out what I'm doing. So I've gone for a little gingham tag to the left of my photo, which I'm tying through with twine. I'm distressing the edges first, because I distress the edges of most things, and I'm going to tie that through with some gold twine. When I do that, I literally just poke it through the hole, and then back through the hole, back through the hole, but wind it round effectively several times, and I end up with the ends on the back of the tag, and I normally stick those down with a piece of regular sellotape. So that's how I tie twine through my tags, and it just gives me a little spiral on the top there, rather than two long ends, which is what I used to end up with. Okay, so that tag's going to just poke out the side of my photo, and then I want to include a little oval piece of ephemera. Yeah, the oval gives me a place to put the little fox, so it gives me just a little kind of layer or platform to put him on, or her on. So to the right of my photo, I really love the cute little figures that are in this collection. There's a little girl, she's got a skirt on and a star in her hair, she's really sweet. So I'm adding her to the right of my photo, along with a piece of ephemera which has leaves and a strawberry. So I don't think we saw any strawberries on this walk, but this layout is all about kind of woodland and things growing, and getting back to nature. So I'm really happy with having a strawberry in there. Up on the left, I'm just adding a little banner that says Make Believe, because we're always playing Make Believe here. The little tab above the photo says Adventure with Me, which is pretty cute and works well for the layout as well, so I'm just putting that in there. Now that Make Believe is a piece of ephemera, so it is lightweight and not bulky. So I'm just sticking that onto my rolls of paper with my normal ATG tape, and it's, even though it's not stuck on either side, it's because basically there's a big gap underneath the left hand side of the Make Believe sign and the base of the layout. It's a big gap there because the height of the rolls of paper is quite high. I think that's secure enough because it's stuck in the middle, and because it's so lightweight, it should be fine. So okay, just coming in to embellish the top part of the layout now, or the top of the teepee. So I've added the Adventure With Me label and 2 little puffy star stickers from the puffy sticker sheet that came with this collection. And I'm just trying to work out my flag there. So I've got this double flag, and I really wanted it to go at the top of the teepee, but it was too big when it was a double flag. So I tried elsewhere on the layout, but it definitely has to go at the top. So I just chopped off the top part. So I say it was a double flag, so the second flag I just chopped it off, and there we go. I have a little flag to go in the top of my teepee. Yeah, it's brilliant. I love how it's turning out. This layout is brilliant. One of my favourites this year, I think. And it so wasn't planned either. When I sat down to make this layout, I had got these pictures in mind, but I hadn't thought to make a teepee until I was sitting there thinking, oh, what can I do? And then all of a sudden it just kind of came to me. So I love it when inspiration hits like that. It makes the process really easy. And once you have an idea like this, you can really run with it and make it your own and have some fun. Okay, so I've added a squirrel to the bottom right. He is a chipboard sticker. Now, because he is chipboard, I've had to stick him on with glossy accents, because chipboard being chipboard is very thick, it's not pliable, and therefore when the layout moves, chipboard has a habit of pinging off. So I tend to try and stick my large chipboard pieces down with extra adhesive, so glossy accents or even the hot glue. To the right of the TP, I've added the word Adventures, so that is the title of my layout. That's an ephemera piece, so that made my title really, really easy. I just took it out of ephemera packet and stuck it on. I phrased it up on foam pads, but I didn't even need to think about what title I was going to use. It was just there for me, and it was perfect for this layout. Okay, so just finishing off with a few bits. I'm adding some gold thread twiddles. I tend to add them into all of my little clusters. And now I want to add my journaling, and I've really got nowhere to write it because everything on this layout is busy. So I've actually chosen to write on the edge of one of the rolled up pieces of paper. It's got the rainbow print on it, so it has quite a bit of white showing. And I've just written, "You guys love exploring our village, especially the footpaths around the lakes. We love this makeshift teepee we found." And then I've written the date as well. So just a small bit of just a tiny memory to record, really, but really, really cute photo and layout. Okay, so that is me done. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson in paper and card, and I hope you enjoyed my layout. Thank you so much for joining me today. That was Nikki Rowland for Scrap Academy.